Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on this beautiful Monday afternoon. My name is Christine. I will be the moderator for today. I am a member of the 7th District, but I'm also a public school teacher. So if you have any questions as we go, please direct your cards to the staffers in the back and they will bring them up to me. I'm going to try my best to get through every question that you have submitted this afternoon. I'd like to take a moment to just go over the event rules for today. Any question that you have must be submitted using a question card. Question card must be completed with the required information. Completed question cards should be returned to the staff members. For the safety and visibility of all attendees, no sign shall block the view of another attendee. And individuals who interrupt, disrupt, or interfere with the orderly conduct of the event will be asked to leave. So once again, I welcome all of you. I believe Congressman Walberg will be joining us momentarily.
Good afternoon. Well, I tell you, experiences like that show that things could always be worse. When you see a car burning right in front of you and then explode. Fortunately, Delhi Township Fire Department was there. Did a great job in putting it out. I think Gus and I only had to wait for, 15 minutes? Something like that. So it's good to be here. That reminds you, it always could be worse. Saw the couple walking back with the fire department, and they don't have a car anymore. So anyway, well, I appreciate it, Christine. Thanks for being here and putting your government teaching ability right to work here.
Yeah.
This is up close and personal that way. Had a good town hall this morning at Jackson College down in Jackson. And so let me just state that there are a lot of issues going on. We want to cover as many as possible. When we get to the end of those cards, if we still have time, we're going to take the full hour. Even though we've started late here, we'll take the full hour. And if there are additional questions, we can somehow work it. Can't grab a mic, but I'm sure this room is small enough that you can speak and be heard. And we'll go on until we address all those concerns. So, why don't we get right to it, Christine? I could give some updates on what's been going on prior to coming home last week. At least the House came home last week, having finished up our work, waiting for the Senate hopefully to conclude theirs. But you've got questions. Let's go to it.
Well, we have a plethora of issues that people would like to have your input on. I'm going to start with healthcare because that seems to be the most popular.
It generally is.
Okay, so Patricia and Mark from Grand Ledge would like to know how many people in your congressional district have lost healthcare coverage under the AHCA.
Well, I can't give you an exact number. With 750 to 800,000 people in my district, it's hard to tell. But we know from statistics nationwide that ours wouldn't be that much difference. That we can say, at the very least, we have people who originally they thought to be 30 million people, additional people who would get health care coverage. They barely made it to 10 million people under the Affordable Care Act. With the average increase, according to CBO last year, average increase of health care costs being 105% last year, that would mean that a significant number of people would have to make a choice, having an over double increase to stay on it or to run bare until they became sick and needed it and would then go on at that time. The average increase, remember when the Affordable Care Act was passed, and prior to it, the word was out that it would reduce the average cost for a household by about $2,500. The actual increase as of this year was just under $3,000 increase, not decrease. And so you're talking about the continued melting down of the Affordable Care Act, and that's why we have to fix it. And for the most part, we have to repeal it and replace it with something that works. That gives more choice, that gives more competition, and the plan, the 129-page plan that we passed in the House and sent on to the Senate, sadly they didn't deal with that, would have gone a long way toward meeting those needs. The additional things that Tom Price, as Secretary of Health and Human Services, is doing and can do beyond that would add additional benefit. And then hopefully in a bipartisan way, a couple extra bills run through the committee and hearing and mandatory process in both houses would finally fix it. It's broken. We have to fix it. And so hopefully cooler heads will prevail in the Senate in September and get back to work and at least send something back to us that we put in the conference committee and try to hammer out a solution that at least moves us forward. And that's been done in many things, and we have the opportunity to do it again. Otherwise, most people would be hurting, seriously. Just this week, Aetna announced that after doing the research, they're getting out of totally, as of 2018, providing any insurance on the exchange. Already United Healthcare has gotten out. Humana has gotten out.
Why?
Because it costs too much to provide that insurance.
You sabotaged it.
And no, it's not sabotage.
They don't have
This
the
is-
facility.
This is.
They don't know it's
Let
gonna
me just show this to you.
Oh,
This, as you've seen, is the Affordable Care Act. That spaghetti was put together by CBO and done in cooperation with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And you can see that's what it takes under the Affordable Care Act to provide health care coverage for you.
you lied.
No.
This is where the Secretary of Health and Human Services resides. This is the President over here. We have Congress over here. Then everything in between is all of the spaghetti of bureaucracy that is added to the costs of doing business for healthcare, and that's why insurance companies who were bought into the system initially with the, I guess, the encouragement that people would be mandated
8
to
years
buy
of
this coverage.
obstruction.
Ultimately, it didn't work.
Because of
Where are you at?
8 years of obstruction.
Here's where you are at as patients. Now, in the years of obstruction, remember that the President signed 10 bills to repeal and replace portions of the Affordable Care Act. So we work with him on those things, but those aren't sufficient. So take a look at the 129-page bill that I've read multiple times now, having it read to me once in the 27-hour debate in committee as the Energy and Commerce Committee marked it up. Take a look at it.
Then why
and
are
see
insurance companies
that
making
there's-
so much profit?
There's significant, insurance companies will make profit when they can make profit. When they can't, they'll move from the system, and that's what happened here.
Are all
Next
those
question.
companies you named
Yes,
bankrupt?
let's focus a little bit specifically on Michigan. How much money has the state of Michigan saved under the ACA's Medicaid expansion?
I don't know if they've saved anything under Medicaid expansion. In fact, the way they put their Medicaid expansion together was probably better than most states in the union. Indiana, Ohio, Michigan did a bill that expanded Medicaid, but put provisions in, I know in Michigan, put provisions in that said if the federal government didn't keep up with their responsibility in providing the resources to care for that expansion from the federal dollars, then the state could opt out and drop out of the expansion. And if you talk to your state legislators now, they are about at that point. And that's a challenge. How do you keep it going when the expansion added to a Medicaid system that was already in a challenge setting with the waste, fraud, and abuse, but also the need? And so that's the issue right now. No, Michigan has not made money on Medicaid expansion. And in fact, right now, with the dollars going away and the cost factor going up, they could be in dire straits and ultimately have to drop out of it themselves based upon their law.
Then what about all those people who
Ursula
use
from
the-
Lansing would like to know how many jobs have been added in Michigan by the ACA and Medicaid expansion.
Does anybody know? Ursula, do you know the answer to that? Ursula?
I'm not Ursula, but.
No, I want Ursula. That was her question. Yes, do you know how many jobs have been added because of
What I looked up, 30,000.
30,000 jobs? And these are
Per year, 30,000 jobs.
the,
I don't know, I'm not the expert, but that's what I found out.
I guess you'd have to ask your state representative or senator on that. But I assume it was based on state employment to bring up, to deal with the expansion of Medicaid. Now again, those are jobs that are added, and people receive funding from those jobs and can use it at their home with their families. But who pays for those jobs if that's the case? The taxpayers. So we're looking for jobs that make money for the state, don't add costs to the state taxpayers or federal taxpayers as well.
Then why don't
And that's
you
the
give any
question.
tax breaks to corporations?
Thank you. Harry from Grand Ledge. The ACA, for all of its flaws, has ensured tens of millions of additional Americans. The Republican Party, despite having 7+ years to develop an alternative, has failed to develop one that satisfies criteria that a large majority of Americans support. Are you prepared to work with Democrats to improve the ACA?
Oh, absolutely. Remember I said 27 and a half hours of markup?
You weren't last year.
That was a markup that included Democrats. And in fact, we approved 3 or 4 of their amendments in the process of going through that 27 and a half hour debate. So yeah, we're willing to, but when Speaker Pelosi, former Speaker Pelosi, thankfully says this, no Democrat will support anything that comes out of committee. And that's how it's been done. It's hard to work when you have a leader of the minority party who says we're not willing, even though we're in the minority, we understand we can't lead it forward. We're not willing to allow Democrats off to vote for the final package. So that's a challenge, but in the end, we passed this 129-page bill, Senate to the Senate, meeting key criteria, including pre-existing conditions, that for the first time, unlike the Affordable Care Act, actually has the language in it, that requires the payment of affordable care, or of pre-existing
Read the
conditions.
language.
So,
Read the language to us, please.
40,000 people in this district would have lost health care under the AHCA.
That's not true. Go back to in fact, I better stick with the questions, but I will answer that one. People like to tout the fact that CBO said this would throw 22 million people off of health care. Now, they don't talk about the fact it also said it would reduce premiums by 30%.
And the coverage.
Now, the only reason 22 million people, the number was there, was because those 22 million now had a choice. They weren't mandated to be on. But remember, when it said that under Affordable Care Act, there would be 30 million new people that had health care, and they couldn't get to 10 million. That's all they got. Through 7-8 years of trying, they got 10 million more actually on it. The rest were on Medicaid. So bottom line is, the Affordable Care Act mandated, this proposal said, those 22 million people, we have a choice. One is going to come in 30% less than what you're paying now. You have a choice to pick what you have for your health care coverage. If you're young and healthy, you can pick a catastrophic plan. If you're a guy like me and you need coverage for senior issues and whatever else, you make your choices, but you don't have to buy coverage for contraceptives and obstetrics and all of that. So it was a choice plan. So people given choice, I think we could say at least 10 million of those so-called 22 million would make a choice because they had that choice.
Thank you. We're going to go a little bit deeper into the health care bill. We have a couple questions about mental health. Excuse me. Peggy from Lansing, is there any progress in the area of mental health? Some of the shooters in the mass killings had mental health issues, and if they had received help, maybe some of these horrific events might not have happened.
Great question, and if I don't answer it completely, Peggy, follow that up. But in the Century 21st Century Cures package, before it was ultimately passed, we also add a mental health component to it. My colleague from Pittsburgh, who's a clinical psychologist, has been pushing this for years to put a comprehensive reform in the way we care for mental health issues and give a better punch, that's a technical term, to the use of federal dollars and programs to make sure that we're meeting the needs that are out there, mental health concerns, with Veterans Administration as well. That legislation was added as a companion bill to the 21st Century Cures Act and passed both houses and was signed by the president. So we'll be seeing the impact of more comprehensive mental health care policy as well as dollars going along with 21st Century Cures. In the veterans area, we just passed last week legislation that ups the dollar amount as well as the agency support in the Veterans Administration for mental health care. Not only for PTSD issues, which you would expect to be covered and aggressively going after, but also the mental health that goes in the general mental health care, but also opioid, heroin abuse issues that have a key component or key impact with mental health. Those dollars were passed in a significant budget of four bill package, appropriations bill package that passed a week and a half ago before we adjourned for the August in-district work period.
Thank you. I think that maybe we should table healthcare for just a few moments and maybe look at some of the other.
Don't tell the Senate that.
We have a couple questions here about some foreign policy. Marjorie from Lansing. I'm sorry. Where are we at here? Okay. Drew from Lansing. I'm opposed to sending illegals back to Mexico. This often breaks up families that end up needing social service assistance. Can't the law be changed to prevent the breakup of families?
Well, I think in certain cases, the flexibility is there to do that. The issue is the law has to be changed. And right now, one of the problems we have with breaking up families is because for too long, under Republican and Democrat administrations, the law wasn't carried out. And so it gave incentive and a picture of America that if you could get here, legally or illegally, made no difference, you were here. That's the wrong statement to make. The statement ought to be, this is a place of opportunity. And if you want to come here, there are means by which you can do that. Now, as a member of Congress, there are particular issues relative to our law on how we bring people across and the red tape that's there that we have to address. That doesn't put onerous hurdles into place that don't make sense anymore. Whether it be how we gain information on people, electronic transfer of information and things like that, that could reduce a waiting period. And also the knowledge about the background of individuals so we know that the right people are coming across and we don't end up with problems that sometimes ensue. So that has to be cared for. But even as this past administration, and it's been interesting to read some of the comments of the Obama administration on looking at reports on the problems with illegal immigration and incursion of illegals that we definitely didn't want here. And the efforts of moving toward an evaluation system that included, is a person going to add to what goes on in the United States? Do they have skills necessary to come here and add to what goes on in the United States? Is not a new idea. It was there under the last administration. Those things we have to look at. But right now, simply by having the perception that the law is being carried out more aggressively, we've seen a 50% reduction in the amount of those coming across the border illegally in the United States. That, I think, will allow us to take a look at some of the dreamers, etc., and say, is there a purpose to make sure we keep this family intact? Is there a way that we can substantiate the fact that we are a nation of laws, but still deal with specific issues that might encourage us to keep certain people here and not break up families? We have to do that. And I know that's how my father came across from Sweden, and I'm glad he did. And I'm glad he benefited from America. But I'm also glad that my family put back into America once they came here as well, and we want to encourage that. They spoke English. I don't speak Swedish because my grandmother used to say when I'd ask her, because I'd hear her debating theology with my aunt in Swedish, and it sounded like a lot of fun as a little kid. I learned some Swedish pastries, And I learned lutefisk, which I don't understand why Swedes eat.
Wasting time.
But no, I'm being a human being, answering a question. And have your own town hall meeting sometime. But my parents, my people came across and they spoke English. And Grandma said, we're Americans. We no longer Swedes. God bless America.
Thank you. Kimberly from Charlotte.
Smile, folks, come on, smile.
In my mind, too much manufacturing is being done in China or overseas. How do you expect the people of this nation to keep paying for life necessities, taxes, higher education, when so much employment is being sent to other countries?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a challenge. And right now, I'm delighted with the fact that in September, we're looking at a comprehensive tax reform package. And one of the key reasons of that comprehensive tax reform package is to cause businesses to come back to the United States, to onshore again, as opposed to offshoring, to encourage themselves to be able to keep more dollars that would be taken from them in taxes here and unnecessary regulations. And please quote me right on that. Unnecessary regulations. There are necessary regulations, and there are necessary taxes. But when we put hurdles in the way to the point that we have great companies in the tech industry as well as manufacturing that are simply headquartering offshore now in order to get themselves a leg up in competition with China, India, and other places that are truly competing with us without putting the same mandates that we put on. I mean, of all the industrialized countries in the world right now, we rank number one worst in the form of taxes and regulations. Number one worst. By changing that is true. By changing that, we can move to our tax policy, we can move to second or third in the developed world. That's where we ought to be. And we can't put our heads in the sand. And then, we ultimately have a workforce here that's trained, for the most part. We've got to do some work on that. And ready to do the job that's here. The other side of the ledger, we have to make sure that we do the right job in career and technical education, that we train people to understand that education is lifelong, and you got to go where the jobs are. And so if we need machinists and tool die makers again, we got to train them. Now they're going to be trained differently than my dad as a machinist and tool die maker. Now it's on computer equipment, CNC operators, etc. So that has to be encouraged in our society, and more young people need to see that that's an option as well, without a huge student loan debt to come with it. And so we have that challenge with us, and thankfully we, last cycle, with the last administration, with Barack Obama signing it, we passed the WIA, or the Skills Act, which put more incentive back to career and technical education, downsized the number of federal job training programs, sent the authority back to the states, local communities, and even some industry associations to use those dollars in apprenticeship programs, in internship programs, in educational programs that train people for the real world jobs. We have a tax structure in place that's appropriate, a regulatory structure in place that's appropriate, and trained employees. We'll do just fine in this country.
I think that's a great segue into some questions about education. Harry from Grand Ledge, do you believe in the scientific method as the avenue for determining what is true about the natural world? If yes, how do you reconcile that with your skepticism of global warming due primarily to industrial activity that began in the 19th century? If no, do you think we should drop science courses, physics, chemistry, biology, from high school curricula?
Say yes.
That's probably the most comprehensive question I've ever heard in my life. Other than, when did you stop beating your wife? I never started. I majored in biology with a minor in geology at the university. I believe in sciences. My best courses in high school and college were in the sciences. I'm a Christian. I believe in a God who created the universe. I believe in a God who wants me to be a good steward of his creation. That's why science is important. So I kind of combine those things. Being a good steward of the resources that are here, knowing as much as I can about it, but never believing that I'm God in a legislative costume. So I guess that's the best way I can answer it. I think it works together.
Why'd you vote for coal sludge and fresh streams?
I didn't vote for coal sludge and stress streams. That's the talking points. We voted to give an opportunity for states like Michigan to control their own resources. I believe Michigan and the Great Lakes states are better stewards of the Great Lakes than anybody else. Other states want to take it from us. I believe that the legislation that I introduced a week and a half ago with my colleague and good friend from Youngstown, Ohio, a Democrat, Tim Ryan, not Paul Ryan, Tim Ryan, we introduced legislation that takes Michigan as an example with our meat program on the agricultural industry. That's working very well, thank you. That's encouraging people to use the resources, filter strips, everything else, to make sure that we're not putting excessive nutrients as well as waste into our streams and rivers that go into our Great Lakes. And we've had significant impact because of that. And so the legislation that I introduced, and Tim Ryan co-sponsored with me, offers to the rest of the states around the Great Lakes especially, the ability to use that same plan, which has worked well in Michigan. So it's not an either or. It's a stewardship responsibility we all have. But remember, we ought to be using our resources to the fullest to make it better for all of us. And oh, by the way, other people in the world who have needs that we can benefit as well.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you please be seated for just a moment? If you've got some other questions, we have some more cards.
Now let me say, if you don't think that's an adequate answer, I can't give you a more adequate answer. But that question.
Please sit down.
As a fellow Christian,
Please.
Christian to Christian.
No, we're
The
gonna go with
representative
questions.
said this. Sit down!
We're gonna go with it.
Sit down!
Sit down!
Sit down!
Sit down!
Let him talk. Go ahead, talk.
Throw him out!
Please,
Talk.
please, there's no reason for this. We're Americans, we have disagreements, there's diversity. That's the cool thing about America. When we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, we pledge to a country that isn't iconoclastically unified. We have that diversity. And sir, we're gonna go by the rules here, and if you're a Christian,
I think it's very
You
important.
said that if climate change is a
It's
problem, God will take care of it.
no, I didn't say
You
that.
said God will take care of it. That is
Sir.
offensive to me as a Christian.
I didn't say
It is
that.
offensive to me as a Christian. because it
Okay,
distorts
thank you very
Scripture.
much.
It
Please sit
distorts
down.
Scripture that
Please
says
be
we have a
respectful
responsibility.
to the rest of the people in this room, and please have a seat. We do have a protocol, so if you have a question, I have a card, and you can write your question on this
We
card.
did say
My
that.
question
Thank
is,
you.
does this
Please.
have anything to do with the fact that
Congressman
you
Walberg, we have a question, another question about education.
Pardon?
We have another question about education. Helen from Charlotte.
Representative Walberg,
Sir.
does it have anything to do with the fact that you have taken $200,000 from the fossil fuel companies to profit from climate change and
Thank you.
$50,000 personally from the health profit? Are you using it to them or to your study?
Sir.
We had to say. We had to say.
Very sorry for the disruption. Let's ask this question. It's a very good question about education from Helen in Charlotte. The Education Department Secretary, Betsy DeVos, seems not to know federal law pertaining to mandates for public schools, for instance, special needs students. She is a proponent of vouchers and charter schools. Will those options have to provide for similar accommodations and inclusion with taxpayer money involved?
Well, I can't speak for Betsy DeVos. She is the new Secretary of Education. I'm learning, and I know that she's learning a lot about that massive department. I'm sure that it'll take time to develop, but as of yet, there is no legislation, and again, it has to come through legislation, offering any additional choice or charter schools on the federal level. In fact, if you've heard me speak numerous times about education, the federal government has no responsibility for education. You read the Constitution of the state of Michigan, Article 8, Section 1, very clearly says Michigan has responsibility for educating its young people. Federal government has no article, no section that gives any authority to education. The Department of Education came in 1976, so it's relatively new. And frankly, we did just fine before the U.S. Department of Education. And that's why Barack Obama signed, at our behest, in the House and Senate, legislation that did away with the mandate for No Child Left Behind and Common Core, both of which had good points to them, but not from a federal top-down mandate. So Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, has that background to understand that where we're coming from says, Betsy, we don't want you increasing the federal government's overriding, push-down authority from the Department of Education. So we'll see how it develops. I sit on the House Education and Workforce Committee, and so we'll have an awful lot of opportunity to see what proposals ultimately the U.S. Department of Education wants to move forward. Until then, I can't comment on any specifics because there aren't any. And yet, I understand my authority or lack of authority under the Constitution, and we're going to try to ratchet it back as much as possible, in as short a time as possible, to the states and the local school districts, feeling that that's where the education actually takes place. And in fact, that's where good ideas generally develop.
Thank you. Connie from Grand Ledge, talk about your views and actions in Congress to assure a spectrum of care for autistic children, their families, and adult autistics in areas such as medical psychological resources, health insurance, job training, specialized education, assurance of access. The autistic spectrum is broad, and with appropriate services, these individuals can fully participate in society and the economy.
It all goes into the mental health area that we've been aggressively pushing forward with policy that produces flexibility, as well as funding resources to go to meet those needs. We've also done things like the ABLE Act that gives the ability for families to set aside resources with a tax advantage, not a tax advantage, without a tax disadvantage. Set aside resources much like we do for college student aid programs, so that families can have resources that are tax-free, that can be set up to take care of their family members' needs in autism or other mental health areas. The ABLE Act was something I co-sponsored. It has subsequently become a law that was passed in the state as well. So we have two component parts at the federal and state level that encourage making sure that we have resources available to meet the needs of autistic students as well as the general mental health population.
Thank you. We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some veteran services. Brian from Lansing has the Veterans Administration vaccine approval, especially needed for vets returning with TBI, traumatic brain injuries from blasts in war zones. Michigan has very good systems they could use.
Yeah, one encouraging thing we're seeing, including the 4-bill package that we passed last week before coming home, was the fact that we are giving significant upgrades to the care of veterans, the ones returning, relatively early veteran status, but now looking also at those who have been here for a long time. Since legislation that has passed this year and already been signed, we've seen a reduction by 9 days. Some of you that haven't had to deal with the Veterans Administration maybe not see that as a significant number, but 9 days in reduction of appeal process time for veterans' needs. That's important. We passed last week legislation that the President has signed that gives us the opportunity to fire individuals in the Veterans Administration without going through all sorts of top-level, not the lower-level civil service rules, but the top-level senior executive service rules. That makes it almost impossible to fire someone, for instance. If you'd like to see more examples of this as well as other issues, but on this veterans area, examples at didyouknow.gop, a website, new website pointing out some of these things. But if you can imagine a veterans counselor dealing with a PTSD patient as well as several others, who had been seen on a regular basis sitting at his desk counseling a veteran while watching on his screen, computer screen, a pornographic website. You'd have to wonder, out of common sense, why that person couldn't be fired almost immediately. We couldn't do it, now we can. Now we can. So those are things that are going to help in the veterans area. The Choice Act for veterans is being expanded. CARE is being expanded. And in our budgetary process, fortunately, we have far more veterans now that serve in Congress, and they're keeping us up to snuff on what's going on, including veterans with prosthesis that understand the recent impact of war upon their lives.
Thank you. Glenna from Eaton Rapids, do you support banning transgender personnel from the military? Please explain.
No, that's not been the issue. That's, as far as we know, the present and has been the opportunity for quite some time. The issue is, will we require the military to pay for gender reassignment surgeries for a military personnel and for any family member of his 18 years of age and younger? That's the question. Hearing from the Committee on Armed Services, information was given to me, as well as other colleagues, that I certainly never knew. That the average amount of time after a sex assignment surgery for recovery is 238 days. So for the better part of a year, this person cannot function in the military that they have enlisted in. Remember, this is an all-voluntary military. So for 238 days, they're carried without being able to perform their function because of a surgery at taxpayers' expense that takes them out of usefulness to the military. Secondly, because of the hormone treatments that are necessary constantly from that point on, this person cannot be assigned to a combat situation. Why? Because of refrigeration. Now, those two facts, let alone other issues, ought to cause us to consider whether we, as taxpayers, should be asked to pay for that, which ultimately puts a further hindrance on our military to perform the function we expect them to perform. Because somebody has to step up into that place. Now, we do not allow people with flat feet or asthma to be in the military or have the surgeries necessary to change that if they can be. So, the issue is not transgendered in the military. It's the issue of whether or not a person can carry out the functions that they've signed up to do. That's the issue that we face. And I would contend, until they're able to carry out the functions as a military personnel, including combat, then we ought to step back and not be paying for that.
Pay for Viagra.
Now, we pay for the GI Bill. And a lot of people go into the military, we know, because of some benefits, including the GI Bill, that they'll get after they leave the military. That doesn't impact how they function in the military. We also know that the only way for advancement in the military is by being able to continually advance in the core functions that you carry out. And combat is the quickest way to advance. So we've also said, we'll care for your gender reassignment. But that pretty much nixes your opportunity to advance and move up the career rank as well.
That's not
So
true.
that's what the military tells us when we ask those questions. And that's what I share with you.
I asked that question.
That was your question, okay.
And I know that there are a lot of transgenders that are heroes in the service.
It's not all about service. There are a lot of people serve with us.
Right.
We're not talking about transgender service. We're talking about the reassignment. That was the issue.
I'm talking about transgender.
Well, there's no question. They're in the service. They've been in the service. And if they carry out their functions in the service as they signed up to do, I don't think anybody's pushing back against that. We may not have, no, he was put. Remember, the president was talking about in the context of what we were debating in the Congress at that very time, and that was the transgender sex assignment, reassignment surgery. Well, I'll ask you in this case, talk to the president, but I've given you my answer. Next question.
Thank you. I've got some questions about Social Security here. Robert from Lansing, will you introduce a bill to change the high taxation of Social Security benefits, known as the Social Security tax torpedo?
Robert,
Robert.
Right here.
explain a little for me.
I did about a year, I'm retired now, but I did about a year's worth of research before I retired. I'm fortunate enough to have a pension as well as Social Security, and after all my research, I had saved my whole life and developed a small savings in a 401k. And then when I found out I'd kind of been retired, and I said, well, I'm gonna start to withdraw some of that money from the account, and this is more of my personal experience. I did a lot of research, and yet when I went to look at what it was gonna cost me to withdraw, not only do I get taxed on the money that I withdraw, which I was fully expecting to pay, but that income is added, and that's why they call it a torpedo. That income winds up being taxed from the standpoint of my Social Security. They add that into my Social Security and then tax up to 50% of my benefits. And because I have a pension and Social Security and I cross a $25,000, what they call income threshold, with my Social Security and my pension, 50% of my Social Security is taxed. And on top of that, if I cross...
Is that state tax?
No, it's federal.
Federal tax.
It's federal. The state, and then on top of that, it's an 85% tax because I've also crossed the I think it's $32,000 threshold. So not only do I pay taxes on the dollar, but for every dollar over the threshold, up to a maximum of whatever the 85% is, I wind up having to pay $1.85, which if I take out $5,000 for a year, which I was planning to do, it's gonna cost me almost $3,000 by the time they tax $1.50, so I have to pull almost $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to get the $5,000 in my income. So I've got a master's degree, I've done a lot of studying, I did a lot of planning before I retired, and yet I am gonna have to hire an accountant to go and talk to an accountant. It's really about the complexity of the Social Security, of the taxation. So what it does is it forces my income, what I have to live on, as a person who's kind of enough, don't count myself as rich, I count myself as fortunate, but nonetheless, that's a high rate of taxation at a time in my life where I can't work because of my medical issues, but for me to have to lose, half of my investment just seems to me onerous, particularly when those thresholds are not indexed to inflation. So and I think the figures I read is that about 3% of individuals were impacted by that tax in the early 80s, and now it's over 30%.
If you would do this, help me out. If you could do a summary write-up for us on
I can
it.
do that.
I'm 66, moving towards 67, but I'm not drawing Social Security.
Okay.
And I would like to know more about it. I have a bill that I introduced, a lockbox for Social Security, so it can only be used for Social Security Medicaid purposes, Medicare purposes. But I'd like to know more about that and see if our tax reform plan that is about ready to come out of Ways and Means includes that. I know they want to do
That's why I brought it up.
They want to do some significant reform across the entire tax structure, and I'm glad you made it very clear. Social Security is a tax. In fact, it's a double and triple tax that's going on, and it's an involuntary tax also. So if you could help us out,
I would love to do that.
give me that information, and I'll take it to my friends on the tax writing committee there and
Great, thank you.
see if they thought about it. I would assume they did. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug from Lansing, do you favor raising the cap on Social Security taxes to protect Social Security for the next generations?
I'm certainly willing to look at that. First of all, we need to deal with the fraud, waste, and abuse on Social Security. that's a concern. The fact that it's been used for things that Social Security never was really intended for. We just kept adding on and adding on. That has to be dealt with. But in the end, we made a promise, that being the American federal government, made a promise to the people, myself included, who paid Social Security, FICA taxes all these years, and that promise needs to be kept.
When are they gonna pay it back?
And that's one of the reasons for my lockbox, is to stop them from taking it. And hopefully we'll have a Senate that sometime can go past the filibuster and move things like that forward. But the bottom line is, promise made needs to be a promise kept. And those that are on it or soon to be on it ought to expect that promise to be cared for. And then look for a system for younger employees or those that haven't even entered the employment market yet. That would be better for them, because frankly, Social Security, as it was originally planned and designed going back to FDR, was never intended to be the system that it is now. And it's melting under its own weight, and the lack of discipline of government. So we'll keep working on it.
Thank you. Tracy from Grand Ledge has a question about workforce. People and companies are more likely to invest in training of if the training confers with a qualification that is recognized. What is the Committee on Education and Workforce working on to connect employers, training for Michigan residents to compete in the global marketplace with good wages, good jobs, and educational entities? Sorry.
As I understand it, you're asking what we're doing to encourage the opportunity for our local residents, especially our students, to have real-world training in technology, in academic structures that meet the needs of the real-world job market. I just had lunch with an individual who has several manufacturing operations, tool and die, CAD/CAM, all of that. And he's had great experience in going to the local high school and middle schools, giving an opportunity for the students and parents to see what goes on in his shops. That's far different than my dad's shop that he worked in as a tool and die and maker and machinist. Greasy, oily, dark, polluted, far different than today. And as a result of that, has brought in interns who work during summer for pay, limited pay, but pay nonetheless, and ultimately had come around to hire on and have good jobs, good paying jobs, secure jobs in the industry. This is the effort that I mentioned, the Skills Act that we passed, ultimately called after the Senate sent back called WIA, Workforce Opportunity Investment Act, which reduced from about 45 separate but redundant in many cases federal work training programs down to 15. The House reduced it to 7, but in the compromise it went back up to 15, but at least it's not 45. And the dollars that were going to those programs now were shuttled back to the state in WIA grants that the state of Michigan can use, as well as local community school districts, ISDs, community colleges, and even in certain cases, trades associations for apprenticeship programs or intern preparation programs. Again, there's a lot of creativity out there. When I walk through Lansing Community College, for instance, with some of their trade programs and the high-tech experience that they have here on real-world tools that they'll use, it's an amazing opportunity. The training my daughter got at Lansing Community College in a career field that gave her a career opportunity for the rest of her life. Anywhere she can take it with her, without a huge student debt. And then ultimately, having received that certification, thought nothing to stop me from going on and get my bachelor's of applied sciences, and she did that at a local university, and it has all of that in place right now. These are the things we ought to be encouraging our young people to understand, and maybe even more so. I spoke to the American School Boards Association a few weeks back. I said, I hope you understand what I'm saying here. We need to start working with parents to get through that peer pressure that says, I'm not sure if my Johnny or Susie or Billy or Nancy is really going to be have a great experience at university, but The neighbor's kids down the street are doing it. I don't want my kids up here as failures by not going to college or university. When in fact, we ought to be saying, what meets the sweet spot of your children? That may be in the career and technical area. That may be in computer science. That may be in something that doesn't mandate a 4-year degree to start. But most likely down the road, once the person is in it, they'll say, I might as well go on and get some further advancement. And oh, by the way, my employer may pay for that in the process. Education, as I understand, is a lifelong process. I hope it is. We're always learning or ought to be learning. And the same thing can be with our career and technical education. And so that's been the emphasis that we've carried out with the last administration, working together, and what we'll continue to do with this administration as well.
Thank you. We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the Great Lakes. Ruth from Lansing, do you support cutting funding for the Great Lakes Reclamation and Maintenance Program as the Trump administration does?
I think the Trump administration basically put the gauntlet out and said, if you don't think it should go this direction, then find me funds to do what you think ought to be done. We did that with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. If you've looked at my record, it's been a long-time proponent of GLRI. And the beauty of it is that our entire delegation of Michigan members of Congress, both in the House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, have worked together on this. We've worked with other states in the Great Lakes as well, and we've been successful in getting the GLRI funding into our budget. And that's what's moving forward. Remember, the President proposes, Congress disposes. And he may put something in as more or less a shot across the bow saying, we've got to cut. We got a $20 trillion debt. It's time. You have a president now who will sign repeal of mandatory spending, not just discretionary spending. So let's go across the board, because the only way we deal with that $20 trillion debt is start to reprioritize our spending on the mandatory level as well. And that takes a president who will sign repeals of unused or unnecessary programs, agencies, or laws. We have that now. But we also have the opportunity to say to the President, Mr. President, I agree with you, we need to cut. But there are certain things we have to keep. And when you have 20% of the world's freshwater resources in our Great Lakes, and as a Michigan legislator, with the Great Lakes surrounding us on 3 sides, there's a priority. And I think we're successful in getting that back in, working together, and that's where it'll be. We've done a number of other things. I told you about the meat program. I won't go over that again. But that's another effort to try to get at pollution of, restoration of, and caretaking stewardship of our natural resources.
William from Lansing would like to know what you will do to protect Michigan's water from the effects of climate change.
What's his name?
William?
William, explain that a little more to me. I think I've answered questions about what we're doing to protect and preserve the Great Lakes.
I think you kicked him out.
I didn't kick him out.
Probably.
I didn't kick him out.
He didn't answer his question though.
Well, let's talk about Asian carp then. In June, an Asian carp was discovered 9 miles from Lake Michigan. The Trump administration has refused to release a government study on new proposals to prevent carp from moving upstream from the Illinois River, where the fish already have wreaked havoc on the ecosystem. As a member of the House Energy Subcommittees on the Environment and Oversight and Investigations, what are you doing to address this very critical and time-sensitive problem for our Great Lakes? This is Ursula from Lansing.
Ursula, I'm glad you asked that, because I can give you an immediate answer. The Logan Road study, which we've been pushing for, from the Army Corps of Engineers going back to the Obama administration, has been concluded. And a press release you can find on my website today talks about the fact of how delighted I am. After a bipartisan fashion, we've pushed for that for years. To complete that study, to prove what the Logan Road study eventually has proven, that we've got a danger with invasive species of Asian carp. And now we've got a prospect that we're going to handle it, because the study is done and no effort can take place. And after months of delays, and this is my press release, and calls for action, I'm encouraged to see the Army Corps of Engineers finally release the Brendan Road study. Now that this report is has recommendations that are public, it's time to take this positive momentum and push forward long-term solutions to stop Asian carp from damaging the Great Lakes. Asian carp pose a profound environmental and economic threat to the Great Lakes, and it is critical we take immediate action to thwart the spread of this invasive species. Well, we can take a gift and we can snub it, or we can say it's the best we got. Let's move forward, okay? So I give you good news. You don't have to take it as good news, but it's good news to me, because we're finally, after years of trying to move forward on that, being held up by the Illinois interests, only the Illinois interests, with a president who sided with the Illinois interest of shipping down the canals there. We finally have an opportunity. So I'm going to smile about it, folks, and I'm going to hold their feet to the fire still, but we're off dead center.
Then you'll fight for money.
You get my drift? I've already fought for that. I've already told you about that.
Thank you. Michael from Lansing. We're going to shift gears a little bit. What is the status of the Michigan Unemployment Insurance investigation into contractor problems?
You're going to have to talk to your state legislator on that. I'm not getting into that. I can get in trouble in other areas. We'll let them deal with it.
Okay. Billy from Eaton Rapids. When is Congress going to pass bills to repair the infrastructure, roads, airports, bridges, electrical grid, and cybersecurity?
I'm glad you asked that too. We've gone a big way to do that last year under the old administration. The Highway Transportation Trust Fund bill that hadn't been passed the first 6 years of Barack Obama's presidency, with Harry Reid standing the way all through the process. Finally, he got out of the way by getting the minority party. We passed it. A 5-year extension of the Highway Trust Fund bill. The President, Obama, signed it. Dollars are already going. Have you seen all the orange markers? Boy, I have. And I travel in 7 counties in this district. And I'm delighted to see those orange markers. Are there more to be done? Yes. We've got a transportation bill that's wending its way now through in our 12-bill package. It's already out of committee, the first time in a decade that we have all 12 appropriations bills out of the Appropriations Committee and ready for us to tackle on the floor of the House when we get back. I'm excited about that. That has further dollars in. Just make sure your state legislature uses the dollars appropriately as well, and your local county road commissions. Another good news. Next.
Okay.
Keep giving me the good ones.
Yeah, this is a good one. Okay, Sherry and Lana from Lansing, do you support our president?
You bet I do.
Make America great again.
You bet I do. He was elected by the people. He was elected by the people. Just as I was elected by the people. Well, let me encourage you. Let me encourage you to go to didyouknow.gop. Go to didyouknow.gop. I'll encourage you. In the House, we have supported the promises that we made to the people who elected us. Now, not everybody in this room voted for me. I know that. Some did. My responsibility over the 5 terms that I've been given the privilege to be here. Remember, I was here 1 term, and y'all threw me out. That's your right. That's true term limits. You put Mark Schauer in my place. 2 years later, after votes were taken on the Affordable Care Act and passed, Dodd-Frank passed, Cap and Trade in the House passed, shovel-ready jobs bill, remember that one? They put me back in and took Mark out. On the basis of that, I know that not everybody voted for me. But in successive years, they've increased the percentage of voting. But each of those times I've said, this is what I stand for, this is what I will do, this is my commitment. And I said during the course of the campaign, if Donald Trump keeps his commitments, I'll be there to support him. And I have been. Do I like his style in every case? I don't understand his style in every case.
Are you supporting the wall?
But I do know right now, the economic factors are going very well in this country. Unemployment is down historically in this country. Stock market is record proportions in this country. And when I talk out in manufacturing, I'm going to a manufacturing site right after this, Magnet. And I'm going to hear the reports. We got more work and opportunity we know what to do with. We need more employees that are trained and ready. That's what I'm going to hear. Now that's optimism I like to hear. Is everything perfect? No. Does Donald Trump get everything he wants? No. No president should. No member of Congress should either. It's a process that we work in. 435 members of the House. I'm only one of those 435. So I have to understand that there is compromise that's required. But we still keep moving the direction that we said we would move. So here, what's taken place prior to our August recess? This is recess, folks. 2 town halls today, 2 town halls tomorrow, another the next day, and a lot of site visits, and that's what's going on. Landmark Department of Veterans Affairs reform. I've talked to you about that. Pay raise for our troops. The largest pay raise in 8 years for our troops and their families. Passed. Signed into law. Historic regulatory relief to rein in Washington, D.C. 14 Congressional Review Act resolutions that were passed, mine being the 14th, that did away with hurtful regulatory regulations that were put in place not by the vote of Congress, but by the Obama administration in the last 2 months of his being in office. Up until this time in the history of the United States, only one Congressional Review Act was ever passed and signed into law. This president signed 14 of them. New tools to end human trafficking. That's a bipartisan issue. Debbie Dingell and I worked together extensively on that. With legislation I've co-sponsored with her and she's co-sponsored with me. Resources to fight the opioid epidemic. Sanctions on hostile regimes. Most recently passed bipartisan. 405 to something. Sanctions continuing on North Korea, Iran, and Russia.
No-brainers. Yay. Good job.
Well, we take credit for no-brainers too, you know? Though there were a number of people who voted against it, I guess it was a no-brainer for them. Stronger border security. I mentioned to you 50% less incursions of illegals over our borders since the beginning of the year. Tougher enforcement of immigration laws, including part of the bill, the 4-bill package we passed last week that gave $1.6 billion to build a wall that the president asked for. More resources for more military readiness. Repeal or replace of Obamacare. We passed that in the House. True to our promise. Restart of the school choice program in D.C. We're responsible for that in D.C. They had the D.C. promise for years. Barack Obama came in and did away with the D.C. promise. Who did that impact? Inner city kids. And we had these inner city kids come into our education committee with their mothers and say, why did you do this to us? The first time in our kids' life, they are in a school where they're learning, and they don't have to worry about the violence in the school. Well, we reinstated that, and the president signed it. Those kids have an opportunity now. We can't do that in every school. We don't have responsibility for that. Congress has responsibility for the District of Columbia. Replace Dodd-Frank with Main Street relief. That was the Choice Act. Many of you heard that there was James Comey in front of a congressional committee. Did you hear that? Did you hear that the Choice Act was passed that same day? Probably not, unless you're a banker. Expansion of skills-based education, we talked about that. Increased energy resources. That's just a small list of what has been accomplished since the beginning of this year to now. And every one of those things, if you want to say, has Congress supported the president on that? Yes. Those were the things he was asking for as well. And remember, last week when the Senate couldn't do what they're supposed to do, 48 Democrats and 3 Republicans voted no. That's it. You'll have to ask John McCain, Susan Collins, and Markowski about that. And then ask Schumer too, why he's unwilling to even work toward a solution that we're asked. He was invited through the course of the entire process, and if you believe that, I've got some swampland down in Lenawee County, I can tell you. So, anyway.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more question.
We were
Lisa,
late how long? I want to make sure we do the full hour.
yes.
We're missing a whole category. I don't understand what the moderator's doing. Foreign affairs, foreign relations, we haven't had one. My question, I was here at 20 after 1.
We did speak, we spoke about China,
Nice question.
we spoke about immigration,
Russia?
and
How about Korea? How about impeachment? Mine was North Korea.
North Korea?
actually, I'm on impeachment, so I'm there.
Well, North Korea, I just told you, put the sanctions on.
Yeah, you did. But what, the latest from them is that they have no intention of sitting down to negotiate about nuclear development or intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Do we expect them?
No, but my question was, under what circumstances would you support military intervention? If the president orders the troops there, would you support them?
Well, the beauty
in North
at the
Korea?
DMZ in South Korea. That's South Korea. We have some of the highest trained troops in the world right there on the DMZ. I've been there.
North Korea. not
I've been on that. Well, that's,
Well, they're right on the,
you're not going to get in North Korea.
they're right on the borderline.
They're not letting us in North Korea. They let liberal college students go to North Korea and send them home, tell them about the beauties of buildings that look like buildings but have nothing in them. Talk about the fact that there's one light. Sun Myung-un's father, his statue in the center of the square, and you can see that on satellite pictures. They won't let us understand the truth on that. But the only way we get to them is sanctions right now. However, this administration has made it very clear that he's listening to the military commanders in the field. And I think as a result of that, we're seeing greater impact in Syria, in Afghanistan right now, and ISIS being beat back for the first time because of the willingness to listen to people who know how to prosecute a military action, as opposed to the last administration who made that decision himself. That's the challenge we have. But no, North Korea, continue to put those sanctions on. I mean, it's sad because it impacts the common, ordinary North Korean citizen who's put upon. And I just had an opportunity for a briefing from a gentleman who had been held for 2.5 years in North Korean prison, who ultimately were able to get out just a few months back, who told us of some of the realities that are going on there, and how finally they're starting to get some clandestine information back to North Koreans themselves, and encouraged us to be very careful in what we do with refugees and how we handle them. And I guess I can't say any more than that, but there are ways we're going to get more information, so that, and people say that this dictator in North Korea, the young guy, is crazy. He is not.
He's crazy smart.
And I'm thankful that when I talk with our military and our clandestine forces, our intelligence gathering people, they don't treat him as crazy, they treat him seriously.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa from Diamondale. Do you consider obstruction of justice to be an impeachable offense? If Donald Trump fires Special Counsel Robert Mueller, refuses to cooperate with the investigation, or is found to have obstructed justice, will you vote to impeach him? If not, why?
Can't answer that. You have to see the reason and rationale behind it. Right now, you'd have to say, why has Mueller hired attorneys that contributed significant dollars to Obama and to Hillary Clinton?
That's a deflection
Now,
from the issue. What's the issue?
The issue is
Collusion.
Donald Trump has made no statements that he's going to fire Mueller. So we're talking about a hypothetical here. We're talking about a hypothetical here. Bottom line is, until we deal with realities, if the president, I can say this, If the president does something illegal or in violation of his oath of office, certainly I would support impeachment.
Conflict of interest by the.
But if we're talking about political perception, that's a different ballgame. That's a different ballgame. We could have said the same thing about political perception about Obama. But if you were in a number of my town halls, as I addressed people who said we ought to be impeaching Obama, I would say two things. One, what is it that he should be impeached for? Incompetence doesn't count. And secondly, where do you get the votes to do that? So I think I've answered my question. I want to say thank you for coming out. Folks, I'm still number 10 out of the entire Congress for the number of town halls we do, live town halls. We're going to keep that up. But you got to understand, we're not going to agree on everything. And I think in some ways we need to understand that we can go through this in a peaceful fashion, enjoying America as it is, knowing that it needs some care. There will be diversity there. But folks, I'm committed to doing my best to represent you to the best of my ability according to the Constitution of the United States, not my own perceptions. And I'd hope that we together could come back to another town hall meeting in another town near you, because there will be. With 7 counties in my district, there are a lot of towns to get to. And we'll keep going through them. We've done every single county so far and started over on counties, and we're going to keep doing that. And I hope you join me in the next one as well. Thank you.